Spring is in the air. What the?
While some of you might still be ripping lips through the ice, most of us, especially those of us in southeastern Ontario, are pretty much done with the ice. Welcome back to my channel, guys. In this video, I've got 6 tips for you on how to better summarize your ice fishing gear. Let's get into it. Tip number 1, and this one's for your ice fishing hut. If you have a pop-up hut like I do, you're gonna wanna set it up somewhere dry. It doesn't necessarily have to be warm because you can use your heater, put it inside, let that thing dry out, and then let it air out. And while it's doing that, you wanna take some mild cleaner and just wipe down the insides, wipe down the outsides, get any kind of oil or fish slime or whatever, residue, that kind of stuff off the fabric, because that will over time deteriorate the fabric, and maybe if you have an insulated hut, it might start to deteriorate the insulation. The second reason you want to do that is if you're somebody who likes to cook on the ice, maybe you've got a catch and cook going with your frying pan, you've got your oil and your fish and whatever else you might be cooking, all those vapors and all the steam and all the whatever else, just the stuff coming off your frying pan will get into the fabric and it will smell. And sometimes it can smell pretty bad. The other reason why you want to make sure you get as much of that smell out as possible is mice and other rodents that might be attracted to that smell and chew up your stuff while it's in storage. Another thing you can do with your ice hut to combat that is put some dryer sheets or some mothballs or some other kind of rodent repellent inside your hut, something mild, something that's not going to affect the fabric while it's in storage. Personally, I don't do that because I live in a pretty suburban area. We don't really have mice or rodent problems in the area that I live in. Tip number 2, rod and reel storage. First of all, you want to take any plastics or any bait like I have here. This poor guy's a little bit dried up. You want to take all that stuff off the hooks, especially if you use Berkley power bait stuff. Like right here, I've got some of these Berkley waxworms on here. These things will dry up and eventually they'll start to corrode out your hooks. So you want to make sure you take all that stuff off. Secondly, what I like to do, and I find it helps, is I just cut this line all together. I don't leave any hooks attached to my ice fishing gear when I store it for the summer. Most reels will have this little tab here, and that's for storing your line. So you just, sometimes it's a bit tricky, you just get a fingernail underneath it, and boom, your line is set, and it's right there, ready for a new year. The reason you do that, you might put tension on your rod, and that can actually affect the blank over time. The second thing you want to do with your reel is open this thing up, get some oil in there, just to keep everything fresh, and also then you don't have to do it at the beginning of next season. The last thing you want to make sure you do with your reels is back that drag off all the way. The reason you want to do that is if you have your drag cranked all the way down and it's stored like that all summer, you're going to start to flatten the drag discs and you're going to notice a very big decrease in performance of your drag for the next season. Number 3, fish finder batteries. Before you store your batteries for the summer, make sure you charge them fully. That will help to maintain the battery life and keep them working for a lot longer for years to come. The second thing you want to do is make sure it's disconnected from your fish finder. Depending on what kind of electronics you use, if you have a flasher or something like that, then you're probably not going to use that too much in the open water. The next thing you should do, put just a little bit of dielectric grease on the posts. That'll help keep dust and debris from collecting over the summer, depending on where you store them, and just keep them fresh and the contacts clean for the next year. And the last thing, put some kind of cover on the posts. I just use a little bit of electrical tape, and that just covers up the metal, and that will keep anything that I store with my battery from potentially closing the circuit and causing some kind of a short. The last thing you want to do with your batteries, every 2 or 3 months in the off season, you want to give your batteries a little bit of a charge. I use my batteries all year round, so it's not something I need to worry about, but if you have batteries specifically dedicated for your ice fishing electronics that you only use during the ice fishing season, make sure that you charge them every 2 to 3 months in the off season. That will help maintain the battery charge and keep the longevity of the battery. Tip number 4, augers. If you've been following my channel for a while, you know that I still have a manual auger. I don't have an electric or gas powered auger, but I can tell you a couple things. I don't know too much about gas powered augers, but have a little bit of knowledge of small engines. And for a gas powered auger, if you're gonna store it for the summer, you probably wanna take the fuel that's in there, dump it in your car, dump it in your boat, and then run your motor until it's dry and then store it with a dry gas tank. If you absolutely have to store it with gas in the tank, use non-ethanol gas. I don't know too much about the science behind it, but I know that ethanol gas, if it sits for a long time, will do weird things and you don't want that. In addition to the non-ethanol gas, put a little bit of fuel stabilizer in there. If you're one of those guys who has an electric auger, Same thing with your fish finder batteries. You want to take those batteries off, give them a good charge before you store them, and then every 2 to 3 months, give it another charge, just to maintain the charge and life of those lithium batteries. Those ones are expensive. You really don't want to mess those batteries up. Either replace the blades or sharpen the ones that you have. That's just a little tip to keep you from having to do it at the beginning of the next season. The last thing you want to do, put just a little bit of lube on the metal. That'll just help protect the metal blades from corrosion while it sits during the summer. Tip number 5, your portable heaters. You probably want to disconnect the propane tank before you store it and then run this thing until it's dry. I'll be honest with you, I don't know if this makes a huge difference or not, but to me, storing this thing with any kind of propane vapors in the lines, probably not such a good thing for your heater. Usually just running the pilot light for a few seconds is enough to burn off any residual vapors in the line. The 6th and final tip I have for you is how to store your ice tackle during the off season. And this one's really simple. You store it with the rest of the tackle you use during the open water season. Because you know what? A lot of ice tackle can be used in the open water season too. These little tungsten jig heads, they're wicked for catching panfish, hanging them under a bobber. Buckshots, super good for vertical jigging, or if you're fishing off a dock. You can just hang these things right over the side and work it just like you would during the ice fishing season. Those are just a few examples. I'm sure you can get creative with how you can use a lot of your ice tackle during the open water season. So those are all the tips I have for you to pack up your ice gear to store it for the summer. Thanks for watching. Hope you liked the video. Until next time, catch you in the next one.